Hello, teacher friends, and welcome to my presentation on using the literacy skill of compare and contrast in your science classroom. So today I hope to share with you why I think that compare and contrast should be used in science and different ways that you can embed this strategy into your curriculum. Before we get started, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Teaching Muse. I am the founder of Teaching Muse. You can find me at teachingmuse.com or at Teaching Muse on Teachers Pay Teachers. I have been working with upper elementary students for over 15 years now. In addition to that, I have a master's degree in literacy, and I have 90 credits above my master's, being in science and technology and literacy. When I am done with teaching and I need a break, I live with my husband. We have a furry child named Samson. I like to paint for myself, take long walks with Samson to give him some exercise and me some peace of mind, and go out to dinner with my husband where we can kick back, eat some good food, and maybe have a drink or two. So we are using and talking about the skill of compare and contrast today. So for those of you that don't know, compare and contrast is when you are finding what is similar and what is different about two things, whether it's two objects, two science concepts, whatever it is, you or the students are finding the similarities and what is different about those things. So some reasons why you want to have your students use this skill, especially in science, is because it is going to help strengthen their memory. It's also going to develop those higher order thinking skills. So it's taking them from those literal comprehension skills and it's bringing them a little bit higher so that they can make inferences, they can think critically about what it is that they are studying, and really kind of develop those skills as they get older. So in turn, it is going to increase their comprehension. It will also help to improve their writing in the content areas. Once they know what is similar and what is different about whatever it is that they are discussing, they will be able to write about that because they will know what it is. So it's going to make writing a little bit easier. And this is a really good skill to develop students' habits. There are many different skills that we try to teach to our students. And I think the skill of comparing and contrast is a great place to start because I think that especially if you start small, the students are going to be able to pick out those differences, whether it's visually, or something that they hear or something that they read. Even doing like a compare and contrast with these pencils, how can we compare and contrast them? Well, we can compare them because they're pencils, they all have a point, but we can contrast them by the color. Some of them may be longer. We're not really sure what's going on this side. But bringing in pictures, that's one way that I really like to start any skill with my students because I think it's a lot of times it's easier to see something visually than it is to read something. So starting by using the skill of compare and contrast, I think is a great place to start when you're thinking of all the different skills we want our students to have under their belt. And I would start with some sort of a pictorial reference. So how are we incorporating this in science? So obviously you're going to want to incorporate this in whatever topic it is that you are studying. So when you're coming across the topic that it is that you're studying, you want to look at that and see if there is a natural connection to compare and contrast. There may not be. And if there isn't, it's not something I would force. I would wait for another unit to come along where you would be able to make that, have the students make those similarities and differences, decipher the differences between them. So one of the first real units, I always say, we start with lab safety. We still do the scientific method. And then once we get into the crux of it, the states of matter is our first real unit. So I like to, when I'm introducing solids, liquids, and gases, I know this is a little much. I use Venn diagrams obviously a lot. I think that's the easiest way to be able to compare and contrast two objects. But when you have three objects, you're going to add in another circle here. So sometimes it can get a little confusing. So I do make sure that I have them all laid out like this, so you can really see where each, where it's all delineated and where they need to put their information in. But what I do with the students, you can do this either at the beginning of the unit to kind of get them to brainstorm what it is they know about a topic, or you can do this at the end of the unit where you want them to review to show what they know about a topic, or you can do it in the middle of the unit. After you're discussing the different characteristics of a solid, liquid, or gas, you can then have the students show what they know about that by putting the information in each of the areas on here. But this is something that I like to do with the students. A lot of times when we're studying solid liquids and gases, the students can give me examples of each. They don't necessarily know what the characteristics are. So when we have to talk about definite shape, definite volume, that's where I need to come in and give them that vocabulary. And then once they have that vocabulary, they can fill this in. But when you're using the skill, it's really up to you on how you want to use it. Sometimes, excuse me, sometimes I do think it's easier at the beginning of the unit, and sometimes I like to wrap it up at the end to review before we're going to have an assessment. Acids and bases. So we were studying this past year, and the students kept getting confused the characteristics of an acid or a base. So another reason why I like to bring compare and contrast into the classroom is not only so the students understand what the differences are, but I now have this reference chart that is on the board or, somewhere in the classroom where the students can look at it. So if they get confused when they are working on a lab activity or they're working, on some sort of activity at their desk or collaboratively, they have something that they can look at and they can reference. So making a quick chart like this was something that I did. What happened was we learned about acids one day. The next day we learned about bases. And then a couple days went by, we were talking about them. The students were very confused about the characteristics, even though we did a couple activities with it. So before I started one of my lessons, we reviewed and we made this chart together. The students told me what the different characteristics were. Some of them may have to have looks back in their notes, but we made this chart together and then I kept it on the board. And I really think that it helped to clear up the misconceptions that they had about, what characteristic went where and what they did in the different types of things. We were using litmus paper, so some of them were getting confused, what color the acids and bases would turn litmus paper. One other thing that I like to do, I don't know if this is a little extra or not, but I like to try to use colors. Well, I like to use colors all the time, but I like to be intentional in the colors that I use. So for those of you that teach a topic like acids and bases, acids, you will know, will turn litmus paper red. So that's why I chose like the red and the pink over here. And then bases will turn the litmus paper blue. So that's why I kept this blue. So I'd like to be intentional when I'm using that to just try to make another connection. Sometimes the students may not outright pick that up, but it may just kind of be in their brain where they can make that connection later on. Plants and animal cells, that's another really great way to use compare and contrast. I will be following up, for those of you that got this through my email, I'll follow up with an email where you will be able to get these worksheets for free. But this is another great way to be able to use this skill in the classroom. If you're teaching about cells, plants and animal cells have some things that are in common, but then they also have some things that make them different. And that's why they are a plant cell or an animal cell, because they have different jobs to do in whichever organism they're in. So it's another great way for you to be able to incorporate compare and contrast in your classroom. So, I thought I had a slide where there was more. I did have a couple more topics where you can do this with. I know inner and outer planets. That's also another area that I used compare and contrast with because the students were getting confused about, again, the characteristics of each. So I feel like whenever you're having a topic that involves needing to know the different characteristics, this is where you want to bring this skill in. And what I would do is, let me just go back to that slide. Oh no, go the other way, please. So what I would do is I like to bring things in, as I told you, as a picture first. So even before you give them like this bottom half here, you can just have, whether it's on the smartboard, you can just bring it up on your screen and then it's on the smartboard so it's a little bit bigger for everybody to see. Or if you have a poster of it, whatever the case may be. But just talk about what they see visually. Because I think that's the great thing about compare and contrast. A lot of the things that they're going to use this with, they will be able to just see outright visually. With something like essence and bases, they may not. But a plant and animal cell, well, you can see that this is more circular in nature, where this does represent more of a rectangle. So right there, you can talk about the shape. And then we have different parts that are identified. And then you can give the criteria here. A lot of times I do like to do this where I have the criteria and then they can just check it off as they see. So my suggestion would be to start with some sort of a picture and then move on to the reading. This one happens to have both. I do like to have both for my learners that struggle a little bit, because I think that if they have trouble reading, they can also rely a little bit on the pictures. So it's just a way for you to be able to move from making easier compare and contrasts and then move into harder ones. Because obviously, eventually, they're going to have to know how to do that by reading. So I love, because I have my master's in literacy, I love infusing science and literacy together. I just have such a love and a admiration of science and everything around us. And I think literacy is so important. There are so many reasons why students need to read, they need to write, and they need to think critically. So being able to use these two areas together, I think really helps our students become better thinkers, and it improves their ability to be able to think about things a little bit more deeply. So I want to, again, thank you for investing time to make science a better experience for your students. I hope that this quick PD helps you. In a few days, you want to be able to check your email. I will send you the freebie, excuse me, that will have that free lesson in. There's a couple different graphic organizers, and then there are blank ones in there that are great for you to be able to incorporate that into whatever topic it is that you want to use to compare and contrast. If you have any questions, you can find me on Instagram it's at Teaching Muse. And you can also check out my blog, which I have a blog post also that goes along with this, and that is at teachingmuse.com. Thank you, and I hope to see you guys soon.